focus. The first time you tried to capture everything when you walked into a classroom, and then after the panel, we're going to talk about actually what the day looks like. And Sheila, you were talking about how we would start looking at patterns and contrasts. But when you think about instructional rounds and then being able to come back and make sense of what you had, how important is focusing when you're in the classroom and when you're actually being a part of instructional rounds?
Before going into the classroom, and I really like this part, is that you decide in advance what you're going to observe. You decide how that observation is going to be played out, and also how you're going to discuss what is seen. But going back to the first part, deciding in advance what you're going to observe. As a team, going in, we decided which area of the room we would focus on. Because if you didn't, you'd hear a little boy over here, and you'd be like, oh, I'm through, I'm going to go over to this side. But if you just focus on one segment of the room, as a group collectively, when you brought that back together, you get the big picture. But if you tried to focus all over the place, then you wouldn't really get to see it. So deciding to focus on one specific area or one group of students really helps to keep you on task and to keep you up.
When we had rounds at the elementary school, we had one team, one of our team were all people who were not from Tarrant. And their problem of practice focused on cooperative work, cooperative learning. And, you know, those of us from Tarrant saw it all over the place. But those outside eyes were able to focus in another way and really see that it was not cooperative learning, it was really more parallel learning. They're doing the same thing, but it really was not cooperative, which in turn made that school begin to think of almost stages of how you move kids into cooperative learning. And then they have since then worked at changing their centers and really moving toward more cooperative learning. So there's outside eyes.
Make connections of rounds to existing things in your system or your department? Or have you? Have you been able to? I heard Educate Alabama, the descriptive observation. Are there other ways?
About problems of practice. We've really, in Jefferson County, made sure that our problems of practice, that we emphasize that those need to come from your continuous improvement plan. And then our structures that are built around that, we have a continuous improvement leadership team meetings, as well as a central office cooperative that work with continuous improvement. We've made sure that all those people are aware of instructional rounds and are learning. We're doing a book study in those groups with the instructional rounds book, so that we can really connect those dots between the central office, the school level administrators, the continuous improvement plan, and teachers, and how to implement that.
One of the things that happened in our district, our elementary school sort of moved from rounds to looking at a standards-based report card. So they worked over the summer last year to develop the report card. So they're using the standards, they're not averaging grades, they've introduced it to parents. So far there have been no wrinkles at all. I mean, it was really easy to talk to parents about saying, okay, if your child has a 74 in reading, how do you know how to help them? Rather than, you know, so now you can say if there's an issue with concentration or comprehension, you know what to do. So parents have really embraced having more detail and more information about grades, and all of this has come straight out of rounds, because I don't think we've ever gotten there.
An assumption that I want to test with the panel. You know, you said a lot about rounds being a support for Educate Alabama, particularly for those who are charged with observing teachers, and I think we would all agree with that. And one of the purposes, in fact, of rounds, according to the Harvard group, was to help leaders come to a really shared understanding of what constitutes effective teaching. Because, you know, we're kind of all over the map about that. Well, having said that, I have heard a number of people say, and I personally believe, that moving from PEPI to Educate Alabama has constituted a real shift for teachers as well as for administrators. And so My assumption is that our teachers, who will be a part of the 11 instructional rounds that we're doing this spring, that the teachers will benefit greatly, not only because they'll be thinking about what formative assessment and feedback look at action, but they'll be experiencing what descriptive observation is. What kind of value do you see for teachers' participation in instructional rounds?
Helping them refine and improve their practice, because when you share with me the evidence and not just your assumptions or your beliefs, it helps me to reflect on what I'm doing and refine what I'm doing. And so I see it as a vehicle or as a tool to help teachers improve their practice.
Sheila took the words out of my mouth. We're so challenged by the luxury of reflection. And I think it beautifully, just seamlessly, gives us that opportunity. And teachers can see good practice in action and really infuse that into what they're doing.
And I think it should help the teachers separate themselves from their instructional practice. Many teachers take it as an offense, or you're personally attacking them. If you go into to evaluate them or to make suggestions, and if you have descriptive feedback that you can give them that's not personalized, then you have taken the teacher out of the equation and just are looking at their practices.
I think it also helps teachers see the bigger picture. That when you work with your faculty on your school problem of practice, because you're really looking at the school when you're doing the rounds. You're not looking at individual teachers. You're looking at consistency across the school for teaching in the way, doing what you're supposed to do. And having teachers on the team who are doing the observation really helps plant that seed and helps teachers see that it is the whole picture and it is the school and what we're all doing.
Have you all